All right, folks, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel, and this is a new series. There's four parts to it. This is Syrian, Antioch, and Lincoln. So let's just get straight into it. Disclaimer: copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act, 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. So once again, we're going into The Great Deception by Commons Beaumont. And here's a rather unflattering quote from Thucydides, who states, "The way most men deal with traditions, even traditions of their own country, is to receive them all alike as they are delivered, without applying any critical test whatsoever. So little pains do the vulgar take in the investigation of truth, accepting readily this first story that comes to hand." Not a very charming quote, but certainly straight to the point, and certainly one I would expect to be embraced by Commons Beaumont. It certainly has his, how would you say, his flavor to it. So Brennus captures Rome 390 BC. Geoffrey of Monmouth, in his History of the Kings of Britain, states that Brennus, or Brennius, a British king, captured Rome circa 390 BC and is confirmed by Livy, except that the Roman historian describes how Brennus, leading his Senonian Gauls, had the city at his mercy except for the capital, and was frustrated from capturing it only by the frightened cackling of the Capitoline geese, which gave the alarm, a story known to every schoolchild. Well, not these days, but anyway. According to Geoffrey, Brennus was the younger brother of Belenus, son of Donwallo, who divided Britain into two parts, Belenus ruling from south of the Humber, including Wales and Cornwall, and Brennus from the Humber to Caithness, the Senones. So Brennus, ambitious and warlike, in due course made war on Belenus, was defeated, and fled to Gaul, but deciding eventually to make another attempt to conquer all Britain, he landed on its shores with a formidable army. The two hosts confronted each other when their mother, with trembling steps, flung her arms around her younger son's neck and implored the two brothers to become friends. Having finally embraced one another, they then decided to invade the Low Countries, in which campaign Brennus led his subjects, the Senones. The Senones require very close scrutiny as an ancient people on both sides of the Channel. Who were these Senones? Rome unprepared. So Livy describes them as yellow-haired giants of high courage but fickle temper. In other words, they were blonde. He speaks of their, quote, harsh music and discordant yells, and admits that Rome was unprepared for an enemy, quote, never before seen or heard of, from the ocean and the remotest regions of the earth. In the end, Camillus, by guile, utterly overthrew them, according to Livy, but Geoffrey states that Brennus stayed and tyrannized over the enemy. It would appear that they retreated into Umbria, but were finally subdued by Rome in 283 BC. It also appears that Brennus and his Senones in Italy never returned to their own country. Richard of Cirencester, in his De Situ, says that all the tract south of the Thames was anciently occupied by the Senones, who passed into Gaul around 400 BC with their king Brennus, planning to attack Rome, but leaving their own land unprotected and full of spoils. So the Belgae. Some 50 years later, he adds, the Belgae, who were settled across the Rhine by right of conquest, sent out colonies and occupied the deserted land of the Senones. The Belgae were themselves Senones, and as will be seen, were really the Saxons. In Caesar's time, they stretched to Lutetia, later Paris, their name being preserved in the city of Sens and the river Seine. The Senones of Britain were called Iceni, also Senae Magni or Cenomani, very important people who enable us to throw a new light on the past. In southern England, they occupied Hampshire with Portchester and Southampton Water, to where cargoes of metals were brought by horse, by pack horse even, from the western counties and shipped across the Channel to avoid the circuitous and dangerous navigation round Land's End. The uprising of Queen Boadicea. So Prastugas, king of the Iceni, so enriched himself by this traffic that he made the Romans his heirs, hoping thus to assuage their greed. But as we know, they plundered his family, violated his daughters, and enslaved his nobles. Well, of course, when you try to placate oppressors and tyrants, this is the result. It happens 10 times out of 10. I'm telling you, you never placate oppressors. You never suck up and kiss ass, because that way you lose respect, and more importantly, you lose self respect, which leaves you wide open to be only further violated. Take this lesson from history. Oppressors are never assuaged. They will only oppress you more unless you stand up for yourself and kick their ass. You never placate anyone. You kick the fuck out of them and then they leave you alone. That's how it works. But anyway, this caused the uprising in 61 AD of Queen Boadicea and roused other Icenian tribes, including also the Silures under Caractacus, to make war, with the result that Britain was all aflame from the Channel to the Firth, or to the Forth, I should say, the Firth of Forth, whatever. You get the idea. Place names confirm the Icenian settlement mainly in between the Itchen and Antona rivers of Hampshire, with Winchester their capital, and the New Forest was called Icenia by Leland as late as the reign of Henry VIII. But the main country of the Senones lay around the Humber, including most of Yorkshire and also Lincolnshire, and especially the eastern counties of Norfolk, Suffolk, Cambridgeshire, and Huntingdon. Nehemiah's list. So it is significant that these people were termed Sinai or Icena Magna, the Great Iceni or Senones, the senior or original Senones, to distinguish them from the latecomers in Hampshire. Sinai or Iceni is only an adaptation of the original name of the Senones, or perhaps it may be explained the other way around, for I shall endeavour to prove that they were the racial descendants of those Babylonians called Sena in Nehemiah's list of those who adopted the Mosaic cult and were led from Jerusalem by Zerubbabel in the reign of Darius, numbering 3,930 people, uh, and who totaled the greatest proportion of others of non-Hebrew birth who accompanied him and embraced Judaism. Nehemiah 7:38. So only Beaumont would think to do this to connect ancient British tribes with the Bible, but that is Beaumont 101. The biblical Shinar. So the Sena were the people of the biblical Shinar, the Aborigines of the country where Babylon was situated along its rivers and canals, who were also Babylonians or Syrians, and were those who became converted to the Moses doctrine. The true position of ancient Babylon is a complicated and very important question, for very few ancient cities have been more confused than the great walled city of Nebuchadnezzar, both in location and history. It had a great bearing on the past, and we must consider it. Cush was the eldest of the sons of Ham, and the eponymous founder of the Cushites, otherwise the Chaldeans, also frequently called the Phoenicians, red, i.e., reddish complexion and hair, or Ethiopians, same meaning, or Thracians, also red-headed and blue-eyed by the Greeks. And of course, Scotland has the highest proportion of redheads in the world. 6% of the population are redheads. So the people of Bel or Belen, excuse me, his brethren, we are told, were Mizraim, Phut, Libya, originally Ireland, apparently, according to Beaumont, and Canaan. Cush fathered Nimrod, quote, and the beginning of his Nimrod's kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calnech in the land of Shinar, Genesis 10:10. Furthermore, Nimrod's son Ashur, Assyria, left Shinar and built Nineveh and other cities elsewhere, Genesis 10:11. In other words, Ashur migrated and created Assyria. And in this, there is absolutely no ground for the assumption that Babylon was a part of Assyria. Babylon lay in Syria, an essential differentiation. As it is my purpose to prove to the reader that this Babylon really lay in Britain, or whose site now stands the ancient city of York, so also the biblical Assyrians or Ashur went out of that land where Babylon stood, the contention being that they were known later as Senones or Belgae, people of the god Bel or Belin, who were racially Saxons or Saki, who dwelt between the Marne and the Seine and Lower Rhine, eastwards. So the Sena Gallica. They were described as Gauls, and some of their descendants were those who settled subsequently in southern England. The Sena Gallica denoted the River Seine, not a region in Italian Umbria. The Assyrian cities specified in Genesis were Nineveh, Rehoboth, and Cala, also Rezin between Nineveh and Cala. It is of importance to note that the ancient city of Treves on the banks of the Moselle was occupied in Caesar's time by the Treviri or Treveri, a Belgic people of Celtic origin, and the citizens of Treves claim Assyrian descent to this day. On the Rotes house, a late Gothic building erected in 1450, is a proud claim inscribed in the 17th century recording Ante Romam Treveris Stati Annis M. CCC, a declaration that Treves stood there 1,300 years before Rome was built, giving the city thus an origin of circa 2076 BC. Founded by Rebecca. Excuse me. This claim was based on an ancient tradition that it was founded by Trebeta, son of the Assyrian king Ninus, Ashur, the traditional builder of Nineveh and husband of Semiramis. Nor does it stand alone, for not far from Brussels stands the town named Nineveh, I guess, whose origin is lost in the past. And the remote past, yet it offers a strange coincidence. Cali, again, is a very ancient settlement of Man, once ruled by the Senones, and may very properly be related to the city Kala, built by Ninus or Asher, once we are on the trail. Nor are these mere coincidences, for they need to be taken into account with other antiquarian sites of biblical and classic importance in the very essential revision of ancient topography in northern Europe. Insulae Britannicae, if therefore I beg your pardon. If therefore Asher or Ninus quitted his original parental home in the land of Senna, in what is now Yorkshire, and started on his own in the Low Countries, not far distant, we must discover the true site of ancient Babylon accordingly. Bearing in mind the great antiquity of Britain, there need be little surprise if the Senones of the Low Countries, including the Trojans, prove to be a younger branch of the Sena or the Sinai Magni of eastern England. Whatmore, in his Insulae Britannicae, credits the Sinai Magna or Sina Magni as settled in East Anglia and Norfolk, etc., but he fails to identify the people of Lincolnshire other than the Coritani, although there is little doubt that the Sinai Magni, whose very name suggested their importance, dominated both Lincolnshire and Yorkshire from a very early time, ages before the Brigantes managed to spread into Yorkshire after the fall of the Silurian capital in the reign of Hadrian. Great Church of Grantham. So apparently long before that, the Parisi were settled in the northeast of Yorkshire, near Flamborough Head, and they were Senones, having come from where is now Paris. In fact, the Sinai Magni may be said to have indicated the Sena or Sena, the Syrians of Babylon. Another sidelight is thrown on the Senones by the fact that in 680, Saint Wolfram, then Bishop of Sens, the ancient capital of the Gaulish Senones, founded the great church of Grantham, Lincolnshire, dedicated to him, although only a few foundations of the original edifice remain in situ. For what reason did Wolfram select Grantham for this sacred honour? True, a personal reason might have influenced him, but it may have been because St. Wolfram recognized the relationship between the Senones of England and those of Gaul. So the bishopric of Sens, the bishopric of Sens became later the seat of an archbishop who was primate of Gaul and Germany. A further indication of the territories of the Senones is Geoffrey's statement that Brennus led his Senones against Rome and that his sovereignty was from the Humber northwards. Josephus says in his Antiquities of the Jews that the plain in which men first dwelt was named Shinar, and that they descended from the mountains and fixed their habitation in that plain. Quote, from their gods caused them to send colonies abroad to people the earth, and that Nimrod, son of Cush, was the leader who built a tower of burnt bricks and bitumen to defy God in another flood. The place where they built the tower is now called Babylon. So there we go. That wraps it up for part one. As always, feel free to leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Typical Beaumont, he's taking British history and biblical history and pushing them together because, that's typically what he does. It's, I guess, a little bit controversial, but that's Beaumont 101 for you. That is what he does. And thank you for watching.